Hello, my friends. Welcome to Living the Liminal this week. We are on season 7. That just feels so funny to say that. Like, really? It's been that long. But anyway, whew, how are you doing today? Here where I am, it's a beautiful fall day. Fall is finally setting in. I'm so excited. I love the fall. And I have a story to tell you. I'm always going to start off with a story because some of the things that happen, I just think are hilarious and they need to be shared. And this one, the minute it happened, I knew I had to come on and tell you all because it just resonated. And then like I did some thinking. And of course, wisdom comes from that, right? When we kind of sink into ourselves and kind of allow the excavation of whatever it is we were supposed to be learning from this experience. So I have 4 kids. And when my older son was born almost 23 years ago, we did not find out what the sex of the baby would be. So we really wanted the surprise. We wanted the excitement, all those reasons. And so we had names picked out. And if it was going to be a boy, we were going to name it the family name, which was the first name. And then he would be the 6th because my husband is the 5th. So we go into, have the baby that day and baby comes out. And I hear the doctor say, it's a 6-pack. And I don't know, maybe I was just really in need of a cocktail at that point because it had been long labor and it had to stop and then start back up again. And you know how those first labors go, it gets like that. Well, so just the other day, I'm having breakfast with my husband and my daughter. And for some reason, we get on the topic of like when each of the kids were born. And I'm telling the story. Now, mind you, I've told this story for 23 years. That when the baby came out, the doctor said, oh, it's a 6-pack. Okay. My husband looks at me and he says, that's not what he said. And I looked at him and I'm like, yes, it is. And he said, no, he said it's a 6th peck. So my last name is Peck, P-E-C. I think the doctor said it's a 6-pack. Like a 6-pack of beer, a 6-pack of soda. And I thought, oh, how cute. Like, I've told this story literally, I don't even know how many times of how cute that is that the doctor made that cute little connection. And, oh, this is so lovely and wonderful. And then this day, a few weeks ago, my husband's telling me, no, he said it's a 6th peck, meaning the baby is a boy. So we'll name it the 6th and he's going to take the last name. Okay. So my daughter starts laughing. My husband's shaking his head and I'm just sitting there like, how does someone get that wrong for so long? A story like that. And my other question was, how do you tell that story for almost 23 years and no one that has ever heard you says, I don't think that's the way the story goes. I'm sure I told that story in front of my family before. So, of course, I was laughing because you know how I do. I just laugh at all that stuff because I think it's hilarious that literally in my heart, this is how I told the story. And I still to this day think my story sounds a lot better than his story or the real story or the truth. But you know how I'm all about let's tell the truth and let's be coming from a place of truth. So this whole experience kind of got me thinking, where do our stories come from? Like, when I say stories, okay, I'm talking about like the things we think about or the beliefs we have about like ourselves, our family, others within our life, like our neighbors and the people we work with, the world, the big, huge world. Where do those inner narratives come from? The things we talk about, the way we create stories around stuff. Where does that come from? So in my experience and in my understanding, okay, it comes from one of 2 places. It either comes from scarcity, which is a deep sense of I'm not good enough. I need fixing. I'm broken in some way. Something's not right here. And that really comes from a place within us that wants to control. So wants to manipulate and control the environment, okay? The outer landscape of our life. Or our stories and our inner narrative can come from a place of wholeness. And when it comes from a place of wholeness, it really is a choice. It's always a choice. And it's a choice from an openness and a willingness to be adventurous and expansive and to be open to whatever the possibilities are. So it requires, if what you're thinking and that inner narrative comes from a place of wholeness, it requires that you trust who you are. You trust wholeheartedly who you are. You know yourself well. You know why you do what you do. You know why you think the way you do. You know how you do things. You know kind of like your process or progress towards getting something achieved. You like all of who you are. You even like the not so good parts. Okay, like this experience. I cracked up that I created such an amazing, cute, adorable story. And I've been telling it forever. In fact, I even think I put it in the book that I wrote because I thought it was hilarious. And I'm okay with that. Like, I really am okay with the fact that I've been telling that story wrong. Now, it's wholeness is about this honoring all of who you are, which, Socrates said, know thyself. That's the ultimate journey we're on, is to know ourselves. And what do we know already? Well, we know that we're living this human experience. Okay. And if some of you are willing to go into the little so-called woo-woo world, we are also living out a spiritual experience in human form. So harmonizing those two aspects of ourselves is the journey, and not to negate any journey. This is not about, oh, if I'm in scarcity, it's not good. It's not about that. It's about awareness to knowing fully every aspect of why you do what you do, what you're doing, what intention it's coming from, how you're going about living your life. Is it coming from the foundation, scarcity or wholeness? It's going to come from, it can't come from both. Now, there are moments it can come from scarcity. There are moments it can come from wholeness. So it doesn't mean we're one or the other. We can kind of fluctuate and be fluid in both of those. And most often, if we're honest and real, we do fluctuate and be fluid in both of those areas. Scarcity may look like being stuck, not knowing how to move forward in some activity or some behavior in your life. It may look like repetition, like where seasons and cycles just keep coming and going and coming and going. I know there were moments in my life years ago where I would literally say, I feel like there's a black cloud hanging over us, because that's how I looked at this life I was living at the moment. Scarcity can look and sound like, oh, I don't know, we don't have enough money. Oh, I don't know, I don't have enough time. I don't know if I can fit that in. I'm so busy. So again, where are those comments, those thoughts, those actions? Where are they coming from within us? Scarcity can look like not being able to make choices to move yourself ahead. You seem to be sort of frozen in an experience. And so you're drawing in and attracting very similar types of experiences over and over and over, because you are frozen in a moment. Stagnant is another way. With your emotions and your thoughts, you're kind of frozen. And so what happens is you just kind of keep drawing in all these different experiences to represent a movement you need to take or a decision you need to make. Wholeness comes from, oh, don't worry, there's plenty of time for all that needs to be accomplished. Maybe it's also about grounding, feeling really good about who you are all the time and feeling good about where you're at in your life. I know for me, being an entrepreneur, being a mom, being a wife, being a person in the community, I do get into the scarcity mode where I feel like there's not enough time. I can't get anything done. I'm spending, spinning my wheels, trying to get things accomplished. And so when I really sit and get centered into this place of overwhelming joy in my heart, where I can tap into this wholeness, it feels for me like when I'm there, that like I'm standing in this big open field where there's mountains and water, and it just goes on and on and on. I can feel that energy. That's the feeling of wholeness, where there's always going to be enough. And there's always the word always just kind of sets in with anything that we're doing or thinking or feeling. Always enough emotions, always okay to feel those emotions, always enough anything, food, money, groceries, vacations, time with loved ones, time with friends, time by yourself, time to watch the TV shows you want to watch, time to go shopping and buy the clothes that you want. There's always going to be enough clothes for you. There's always going to be enough. Wholeness also acknowledges and gathers up the newness. So knowing that there's always going to be new things coming, which means if there's new things coming, then the change is that something is going to end so that something new can come in. So the endings and the beginnings are always just going to be like cycling, kind of like riding a bike. The wheels are always turning. In a state of wholeness, you flow into that constant repetition of the cycle between beginning, ending. It's growth, it's change, it's ongoing. Where scarcity, you kind of get locked into. You're like, oh no, I don't know about that. And you kind of have to question more. You get very analytical. You get stagnant, and you stop too many times. Think about like on a hike, because I'm not going to be hiking a ton. So I'm going to use that experience. But think about like if you're hiking and you want to stop more because you're not sure where you're going. So you're constantly stopping and looking at your maps and stopping and looking at this and you're not moving through the hike, where wholeness comes from walking that path at a very decent, feeling good kind of pace. And yeah, every once in a while you're going to stop and look at the map, but there's a flow to it. It's not a stop and stare around and kind of get your body all tight. There's a difference that goes on. So years ago, I had this experience and I want to share it with you. Many, many years ago, I was on the phone with a friend and we were kind of talking and kind of reminiscing about, and probably a little gossiping, to be honest here, talking about some situation in our community that involved another person. And my experience with this person was different than my friend's experience with this person. So we were kind of sharing our thoughts, and I shared a thought that was like, hey, when you're working with this person, this is kind of the way it always works out. Based on my experience, I just made that observation. And she got very quiet, didn't say a word. So I got a little uncomfortable back then. Okay, I was definitely in that moment coming from scarcity, and I didn't like the quiet in conversations. I didn't accept them very well. It kind of triggered something in me, like an uncomfortable people pleasing was really where I was back then. And so I said, well, I'm always going to have opinions on stuff. I'm always going to have thoughts. And she was like, oh, we know. And me was in the moment back then, I kind of laughed, but it hurt me. And I sunk into the scarcity sludge, I call it, because I sunk and thought, oh, is that bad of me to have opinions? Is that not good? Should I have not said that? I went through that whole line of thinking, right? Should I have not said that? Should I have kept that comment to myself? Where was this, what was the point of her saying that to me? That really hurt my feelings. Is she cutting me down for being who I am? Am I not good enough? Should I just totally not said a word? Should I even be on the phone with her? I mean, when I went down that whole inner narrative, and those thoughts came from this place within me at the time that was very much filled with scarcity, very much stuck in the sludge. If I look back now, I would have laughed and been like, yeah, I don't have a problem with what I said. I'm purely observational. I didn't cut the person down. I didn't call her names. I was purely saying that my experience working with this person is that this is the way it turns out. So you have a choice. You either work with this person or you don't. And that's kind of the way I am nowadays. Very, very grounded in here's how I look at my life. I have a choice in if I come across an experience over and over and it doesn't feel good, then I have choice. I can either go back to it or not, or I can come up with a new attitude towards it or a new feeling towards it and try that out a little bit. So my point here is that expressiveness, okay, this part of us that wants to be very expressive is our nature. True expression comes from a place of wholeness. Now, as long as, here's where it gets a little fuzzy, as long as our expressiveness doesn't cause harm to someone else. So that whole concept of do no harm is legit. And we need to honor that legitness, if that's even a word, but it is today. Being expressive is our true nature. We were born to be expressive. Think about it when we were born. We cried, we grabbed at things, we twinkled with our eyes, we smiled. We were born to be expressive. Somewhere along the way, that got conditioned to be different. Okay. Being expressive is feeling all of your emotions and not letting anything, okay, keep you from feeling your emotions. We don't even know the degree of emotions that we have available to us because we stick with certain ones that are comfortable for other people. And so being fully expressive is about owning all the ways you're feeling. Just own them, feel them, sit with them. They will, within about a minute and a half, leave your body. They will leave your uncomfortableness, that stomach ache, that little tightness in your chest, the head rush you get. They will eventually kind of just fade out. And then you can kind of align to, okay, what did that feeling have to tell me? What's going on here? Being fully expressive is thinking. It's the thoughts in your head. Do you know we have about 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day? And so being fully expressive is it coming from a place of wholeness is about how are you going to use those thoughts for good? Like, are you using them for good or are you using them for harm? If you're projecting out, okay, so if you're using those thoughts, you get a thought that says, oh, I think that neighbor over there is completely ridiculous. The way they blah, blah, blah. And if I go out and say something to that neighbor in a very harmful, hateful, rude, or if I go to someone else and I'm gossiping about that person, if I'm just spewing out at everyone in my family because I'm mad at the neighbor about doing that, that's doing harm. That's sending out toxic vibrational energy. That's doing harm. Now, let's say I do have an issue with the neighbor doing something that I don't like. Okay, how do I handle that? Well, you think the thoughts, this is really frustrating. I don't really like the fact that the neighbor is whatever. And you sit with what would be the most honorable, loving way of handling that. Okay, first of all, we don't put energy into our thoughts to speak them out, okay, if we're in an emotion. We only do it when there's no emotion there. So then you're in a neutral place. So the first thing you would want to do is to be fully expressive in this place and have it be coming from a place of wholeness is to allow your body to feel peace. Speak from peace. Don't speak from agitation. There's a difference. So understanding our full range of emotions and then using our thoughts to speak through wholeness out into the world is a totally different vibration for us. The other way to be fully expressive is creating something of substance. Now, I'm not talking about you have to write a book or you have to paint a painting or you have to put on a play. I'm talking about anything you do in creating. It could be cooking food for your family. It could be gardening, creating a beautiful front landscape for your front yard. It could be, the other day I was talking to a friend, and while we were Zooming and talking, she was putting together a flower arrangement because flowers had just gotten delivered. And I was watching her, and she was so present with how she was going about creating those flowers in a beautiful arrangement in the vase. It was gorgeous. And so that's a form of creating. Anytime you're speaking words from wholeness and peace and honor and love, that's creating. Anytime you are putting music to something, that's creating. We are meant to be creative, expressive beings. So anytime we're putting something out into the world, it is a creation. And the way you speak to your children, to your husband, to your friends, to your family, to the neighbor, to the workers at the grocery store, to the waitress at the restaurant, are you coming from a place of wholeness or are you coming from a place of scarcity? These are deep reflective moments for us to pay attention to how we do what we do and why we do what we do all the time. We are born to be fully expressive. So right now, in social media, on the news, in the newspaper, all over, there's a lot of actions, words, language coming from places of scarcity. And that toxicity can be attractive. We want to get on that bandwagon. I have something to say too, and I want to say it because now the energy has sort of oscillated. Energy is always oscillating. It's always moving around. So when the energy kind of comes over into a place where, oh my gosh, we can see it and feel it, and we want to be a part of that, right? We're always attracted to wherever the energy seems to be going. Well, those are moments to really sit back and say, am I going into that energy vortex? Let's call it that, because I'm wanting from a place of scarcity to be speaking words of wisdom, to speak from my peaceful heart? Or am I going into that oscillating energy vortex because I'm coming from a place of worry and doubt and fear and feeling like everything's not good enough and we don't have enough this and we don't have this and we're caged to these decisions that someone else is making? These are reflective decisions that we can make in the present moment, paying attention to why we do what we do, how we do what we do, and what do we do? Where are we coming from? Scarcity or wholeness? Anything that's coming out of you, action, words, conversation, thoughts, feelings based on shame of yourself or shaming someone else, based on being rude, anything that's dishonorable, anything that's filled with hate, guilt, that's coming. This is just naming a few of them, actually. That's coming from a place of scarcity. That's coming from something within you that feels like you're not good enough, that you're broken, that you need fixing. If you find yourself doing or being expressive in this kind of energy of projection, then it's ultimately, stay with me here, it's ultimately your issue, which means you are the one who can make a different choice about, do I want to stay in this energy or do I want to get myself to a place of wholeness to where I feel so much love in my heart for my own self, my life, the outer landscape of this entire world that we live in. And that's a deeply learning process. It's not something that will immediately come. So much of the scarcity ways that we interact with the world or think about the world or believe or feel about the world comes from conditioning from our first teachers, which were our parents. and our extended families, our aunts, our uncles, our grandparents, our cousins. It could have been a neighbor that lived next to you when you were young. It could have been a teacher that you had when you were younger. Most of our conditioning takes place from the time we are born until about like 10, 11, 12 years old. Because at that point, what happens in our development is then we kind of start to look at the world in terms of, oh, so this is what this means, and this is what that means, and this is what. So we go from an internal classroom where we're taking it all in to now an external classroom to where we're trying to make sense of our outer world. And then that takes place pretty much from around 13 years old until we're about into that young adulthood, where we're creating how we see the outer landscape of our life. And if you've had early conditioning along the way that was toxic, harmful, rude, dishonorable, filled with shame and guilt, controlling, manipulative, not loving, not kind, scary in some way, if you didn't get the good foundation for building you up, then you're going to be coming at more often than not a place of scarcity. There is a difference in how we operate when we come from scarcity and when we come from wholeness. Wholeness really comes from faith and trust. And that's the openness. And that's the willingness to go down an uncharted path that maybe you don't know about. Maybe you don't see the outcome. Maybe you're not quite sure of the outcome. In the way we've been conditioned to live and in the way our current society is, we don't often want that. We want to know. We want to know exactly how this is going to turn out. We're going to do our research and know. But the shift that is being called into our lives right now, it's a huge shift energetically, is that going into the unknown is not a bad place. It's not as scary as we think, that we can rise to these levels of unknownness and this uncharted place within us and outside of us. So when our outer landscapes really reflect our inner landscapes, and when our inner landscapes reflect our outer landscapes, we're coming from a vibrational essence of wholeness. And more, think about dropping a pebble in the river. More and more of us that can get to that place of wholeness, and then we begin to kind of vibrate out the shift that needs to take place on this planet in so many ways will start to happen. There is never, you were born with full expression, the ability to be fully expressive in all moments, as long as it doesn't cause a harm to anyone else. You were born as a being of perfection. Anything that came out of that was less than that is a conditioning that was placed upon you by your outer landscape. There's never really anything wrong with you. And I'm going to say that again, because I even mean the people that are out there today projecting hate and shame and guilt and doing all that. There's nothing wrong with them either. Every one of us is on a journey to know ourselves better, a journey to understand all aspects about ourselves, our inner landscape, and ourselves in terms of our outer landscape and how we are relating to each of those all the time. Along the way of your conditioning, you forgot that you are loving and kind. You forgot to be loving and kind to yourself. You forgot that you deserve all goodness. You forgot that to offer that goodness to other people and that it would come back to you. When we say we forget, a lot of people struggle with what does that really mean? So here's the thing. Years and years ago, I was skiing with my boys, and we were at this local ski resort here. And I was skiing, and I wasn't feeling confident at all in how I was skiing. I hadn't skied in years. My boys were just flying all around me, and I was struggling. And I remember that was the day of my accident. And I fully remember I've not really ever told anybody this. It's kind of just coming to me right now. That's so interesting. I remember going down that mountain hill. It's not really a mountain hill. And thinking, I'm no good at this. I'm not really good at this. I suck at this. I really don't know what I'm doing out here. And I look stupid and I am scared. I mean, my whole body was like just in fear. And I don't even know why. And what's so interesting is I fell. My ski got caught on a piece of ice and it flipped me around and my knee got all bent up and I blew my whole entire knee out and I got hurt. And I ended up 8 months in therapy for my knee. I had knee surgery. I ended up in therapy. For years after that, I worked with a personal trainer to try and get me back harmonized, balanced, because I had in my knee giving out and having to be on crutches and couldn't walk and so many things during those 8 months, I had shifted my body weight. So I was unbalanced and I was starting to develop new behaviors based on being unbalanced. This is what I mean by coming from a place of scarcity. It starts to roll out your life in a totally different way. You start to manifest, okay? You start to attract experiences where you feel off-centered. You start to attract experiences where you feel broken and you feel like you're not good enough in these experiences because I was coming from such a deep place within myself that felt and thought all of those things. And then the actions, your outer landscape starts to just create this world that you're thinking and feeling within yourself. And most of that comes from this conditioning to think and feel in those ways of scarcity. And then our life begins to create this way. Maybe your conditioning was family or a culture, a generational legacy of scarcity. We have a lot of that. There was a time period where those in our lives years ago went through rough times. And if they themselves didn't come out in a better way of wholeness, they lived that scarcity on and kept taking it from one family to the next to the next. So we have a lot of generational legacy of scarcity in our society today. And that generational legacy keeps getting formulated down to those who are operating from it that don't even understand where it really comes from or what it really means. So what do I want to share with you today? Out of everything we've talked about, what's the most important? Stop running from yourself. Really. We have this incredible society right now, and you can look at it through the lens of scarcity or look at it through the lens of wholeness. And whichever you look at is exactly what your outer landscape is going to be. If you come to it from a place of wholeness, we have this most amazing, abundant life, world, access to so much goodness. There's good people doing amazing things from good-hearted places. There is sweet, loving growth happening in our society today. The outer landscape is whole and perfect, and it's kind and it's good. If you come from a place of scarcity, okay, then you're running from yourself. You are numbing so that you don't have to see the outer landscape that you've created. You've distracted yourself with so much busyness, you can't even sit still for a few minutes. You have to be going and doing and going and doing and being a part of everything and having your hands touching every activity and every person that's around your area and every story that's being talked about. And you're avoiding. You're walking around and you're avoiding. You're just sitting quietly, letting things happen without understanding, without taking a look at them. And you're projecting out onto other people. Your inner scarcity, the feelings that you have that you lack, that you're broken, that you need fixing, even if you don't. So what do you do? If I tell you stop running from yourself, then what's the choice here? What do you do now? What you do is you take some time for yourself. Maybe it's a whole entire weekend. Maybe it's just a couple hours a day. Maybe it's 10 minutes a day. If that's all you have, start there. Start somewhere where you block out, you clear the clutter. You get off social media. You get off the news. You don't read the newspaper as much or if all for a while. You just sit with yourself. Learn to like yourself. Learn to be with yourself. Learn to be in the silence of life so you can hear the amazing, abundant stuff that's going on in this amazing world that we live in. Get out in nature, tuning in, even if it's just sitting in front of your window and looking out at nature. Find some nature. Spend time with yourself so that you can get to hear yourself and understand why you do what you do and where it comes from, so that you can discover the most amazing aspects about yourself, so that you really can feel into your own wholeness, because it's there. It never went away. It's just you've been conditioned to operate from something different. And that difference is lies, and it's a darker part of yourself. So let's bring some light to that. Start to pay attention. Start to pay attention to how your experiences are similar, how they're linked together. Start to pay attention to your inner narrative, your thoughts, your beliefs, and question, are these really mine? Do I really believe that? And sometimes you're going to find that you really believe that you have a dark-seated belief system about yourself, and it might freak you out a little, and that's okay. Just believe it, and then sit with it for a while and ask yourself some questions. Get yourself a health professional or someone who can help you work through some of those darker moments in your life, some of those conditioned experiences that have influenced you in a not so good way. Take a look at your behaviors. Take a look at your body. Is your body relaxed, or is your body in constant nervous agitation? There's a difference. Pay attention to how your body is interacting with your outer landscape. That tells you a lot. Let the amazing awesomeness within you be revealed. Show somebody the awesomeness about you. Not wearing your masks, not hiding yourself, just being all of who you are. Stop running from yourself, and allow all of who you are to be revealed. Scarcity or wholeness. You get to choose. And if your life has conditioned you to be scarcity, to be coming from a place of scarcity, you get to choose to be whole now. You get to choose to change the trajectory of your life. And you get to be someone different if you don't want to be that. You don't have to just keep walking the path that's causing pain and suffering anymore. You get to stop that. You get to choose. It's sometimes hard decisions, sometimes big decisions can lead to big love. Thank you so much for listening today. It's always a joy to be talking with you all. I love you. Peace out, my friends.